Welcome to Mark D. Maker. My name's Mark Taylor, and we're going to be looking at wood burning. I got a couple of wood burners here, and we are going to look at them and explore putting some detail in your wood carvings. So we'll start off with the wood burners. This is mine. This old guy's probably 20 some years old. I actually saw one of these on eBay, and it said vintage detailer. Anyway, so here's how it came. This blade is kind of standard with them. It's kind of like an X-Acto blade. It gets hot. This is a rheostat, and you can control how hot it can get with this. And I can show you some tricks too later on using it, ways to cool it down without touching this. And this is kind of a shader, but it also has a very sharp edge. And I keep both of these just as sharp as a carving knife, but I don't put nearly that kind of pressure on them. I let the heat do the work when I'm using one of these. This one came with one handle, and at a carving show I bought another one, but if you look at the video where I talk about carving knives, the same catalog there, they also sell multiple handles and multiple tips. These will pull out, and you can interchange the tips too if you want to save a little money. This is thought you'd get a kick out of this. This is something I made a long time ago. Check out the date on the back of that. Yep. I've been at this a while. But this is wood burned. I simply had a pattern, and I transferred the pattern onto the wood and then burned in. And see if I can get in close, and you can see it's burned. And then I simply use a thinned down acrylic paint to paint it. I found that while I was looking for this wood burner, and it was in a box covered with dust. This wood burner is a multi-purpose wood burner. It's really, I got it for doing soldering electrical wires. It has a little case in the back here, and it has multiple tips. Let's see. So it has multiple tips, and all these tips will get hot. This is the one I use for doing soldering connections, this one. As you can see, it has a number 11 X-Acto blade. That heats up. It'll heat that up, and you can do very, very fine lines with it. It's a blunt end. This is a nice sharp end. And you can take a Dremel and change this, manipulate it. One of the guys I watch on YouTube on a regular basis, he carves snake walking canes, and he ground this to a different shape, like a snake scale. So it's always interesting watching what he's going to come up with. A burning point. Now, this piece can be used as a shader, but it's really designed for doing what's called welding plastic. If you have a broken piece of plastic and a 40 watt, I wouldn't use any more than a 40 watt heat iron like that. You can melt plastic and melt it back together again. And this is what would be called a shader. So you would be able to go in here. Instead of shading, I simply use little lines. But if you wanted to make an area dark, you could go in with this and just darken it by pressing it on there like an iron. To clean these bits, really fine sandpaper And this is a sanding sponge. And this particular burner has a sponge on it, which you can just clean the tips. It'll go because it'll be hot. But you run it across here to clean the tip. Sometimes they get pitch or resin on them. This I usually just lay across a very fine sandpaper on both sides to get the pitch off of it. If it, when I'm done, what I'll do is I'll strop it, just like I would strop a knife to keep it nice and sharp. All right, so I got the burner here, and we'll set it on between 3 and 4 for right now. This is a piece of basswood, and I'll start off kind of just going with the grain, and you can see that it burns a decent line. If you're going for the effect of fur or feathers, that'll typically be a lighter touch. And if you're doing fur or feathers, you will be moving both the pen and sometimes both the pen and the block of wood. Now, a little trick that I learned from a wood carver is you can see when I pause and pull this up, that burn got real dark. So what he would do is just blow gently, and that keeps the pen tip cool, cools it down, and it forces the smoke from the burn away from you. Now you can come back and undercut this. So you're pressing down and pulling, and it'll help give it depth. In the carving process, the first thing you're going to do, though, is what's called landscaping. So you're going to, here's a good example. I'll reach over here. Now you can see all these bulges, and I'll refer to that, like Floyd Schultz does, as landscaping. So whether it's a bird or it's an animal, you're going to want to put the form in place first. The burning is just to cover the surface. You want the form in place first. And you can see there's a lot of shape here. There's a lot of form. Here's another example. This is going to be a American kestrel. And there's a lot of humps and bumps here that go into place first. And then you cover each one of those sections with the burn marks to make it look like feathers. This is an American kestrel that's been burned and painted. This is a little elf owl that I did, and you can see the different areas and how the feather treatment is slightly different. It's not painted yet, just burned in. The eyes are taxidermy eyes. The lighter color on nostrils up here is 2-part epoxy. Same with around the eyes. You can see how the burning is following it. I literally use reference material to try to follow the lines that an elf owl would have with feather placement. And this was just a piece of wood that it was like a 2x4, and made it look like a branch. They did the best they could. I'll probably come back and make it look a little more realistic. Here we go. Here's a much better reference for landscaping. You see this hump here and this hump here, and those represent feather groups. This is a particular feather group here, and there's another feather group here and another back here. When you burn in detail that's this fine, you just can't put paint on top of it. I'm trying to get close. Hopefully this will focus. Paint would clog these little lines right here. So what you have to do is put basically stained water on it. Now this was painted because there's no detail on it. Glass taxidermy eye. But this took a long time to paint because it's probably somewhere between 15 to 20 layers of very thin acrylic paint. Very thin, like tea. So I realized that, not everybody's going to spend a massive amount of hours working on a single piece. You may just want to use a wood burner as an accent some things. And you can see that really does add a lot of pop. You could actually get away with staining this, and it would look really nice for somebody who really enjoyed horses. Here's a simple scroll saw cutout where I drew in with a pencil and then came in, and you can actually undercut these feathers with the burner. And so if you pull your finger across this, you can feel each individual feather, and see if I can get this to focus on all the little barbs there. And you could paint this just the way it is, or even stain it, and it would be a nice Christmas tree ornament, a Christmas gift. All right, let's take a look at a couple of techniques. So in feathering, these are going to be feathers, and one technique is to lay the pen sideways and to kind of undercut, kind of score in the feather, kind of burn it like that. Takes a kind of a light touch because it'll try to dig in. And then come in and burn in the quills of the feathers. And you'll start in the deepest part here where that burn is, and pull out to the part that's the bottom of the feather, which is going to be sticking out the most. So you're kind of landscaping, kind of a way of cheating doing your landscaping, but that's one way. And the other way is just like I've done up here at the top, is just you press it in and you let it burn a little bit of depth and then out. And this is the way I usually do it. There's so many different ways of burning, and you'll find the temperature that you like to be at. You'll find the style. And when you get up to the competitive carvers, you can look how a piece is burned, and you'll know who did it by their own style. Now, when you're working miniatures, the lines get really, really tiny, and you're using just the very tip of the burner to make each one of these lines. On a very low heat, you're just scoring. So this is about at a 3. I'm going to take it way down, cool it off. And that's about what I would do with a miniature, because because it's not as hot, you can get these lines really, really, really close together. The hotter it is, the deeper it's going to go. Before I knew that rule, I did this guy back in 1986. Matter of fact, I really didn't know what a duck looked like. You can see both of these. The beaks are completely wrong. The feather groupings are completely wrong, but these were some of my first burnings that I did, carvings that I burned. And not too bad. This one actually won an award in the county fair, so it gave me a little bit of a boost. Made me feel good. So let me show you over here. This Indian that I carved. You see that you can use it for other things other than animals, feathers, or fur. This is an American Indian that I carved. He's got the cigar from the old traditional cigar Indian, holding a tobacco leaf. And that was burned. A lot of details were burned into that. And there's a feather. There is a thing, feather carving. And if you go to the Ward World Championship show in Ocean City, Maryland, there's people compete carving feathers. This was burned on a fairly light setting. And then the cuts, the separations, were done on a higher setting, just coming straight in. This one's painted with a gouache, which is gesso. And then if I wanted to make it look realistic, I would put very thin layers of paint and build it up. Of course, with anything like this, it's research, research, research. Well, I hope this video was helpful to you all. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.